Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Wynn. Quick introduction about who I am and where I sit within the realms of Microsoft Teams and voice and everything else within that. So, as you can tell by my accent, I'm not British at all. I'm definitely don't hail from the continental Europe. I was born in Chicago and raised in Dallas, and I moved over to England in 2002. And I've been here ever since. Used to work with Microsoft Consulting Services, looking after Exchange and all sorts. My dad was one of the developers for Microsoft Mail 2.0. I spent quite a long period of time becoming a veterinarian, and I spoke to my dad one summer, and I said, "Dad, I can't do it anymore." And he said, "Don't worry, I'll get you a really nice corner job in a corner office at Microsoft." When I was thinking like corporate vice president, my dad had the other idea, more like corporate mailroom. So I got my start working in the mailroom at Microsoft, and I kind of worked my way up from there. As part of the first globally awarded Microsoft MVP specializing in Teams. And one of the kind of two anecdotes that you may or may not be able to remember me by is that whilst I was going to university and studying up and doing all those things, I used to run a movie theater. And whilst I was there, I met Harrison Ford. Well, roll on kind of 2 years later, and I was doing I was on vacation on a holiday in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I bumped into Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford remembered who I was. So he came up to me and said, "Hey, aren't you that guy from Texas?" And another anecdote is I was once ranked number seven and Halo as the first Halo game piece from Microsoft, and I got to play Bill Gates in a death match, uh, and of course he was not victorious by any stretch of the imagination. So, quick overview where what we're going to be learning about today is kind of what is Teams, very high level, voice, calling plans, operator connect, direct routing. What's some of the new features? And that ties into meeting rooms and meeting rooms as a whole. Some resources that we have to be able to go, and then I see any Q&A that you may have. Now, by all means, as and when we reach these things, feel free to shout out. Uh, I'm making the assumption that your English is better than my German. I've got three children who are learning German in secondary school and high school, but nonetheless, mine is very poor. So, kind of overview. What is Teams? So, Teams gives us rudimentarily, it gives us a basis of how we communicate. So, out of the box, it gives the ability to chat, have meetings, and have some internal calling. And within that, it gives us the ability to communicate and collaborate. So we can work on files, and this ties into the session before mine. It gives us to be able to access this information, remotely and work together and work collaboratively within it. And we can have files, and we're going to see this explode with the likes of Loop and how we work together within different pieces of information, and how it's not just going to be Office 365, but we're going to tie into all sorts of things like dynamics and how we pull those things in. And we're already seeing some massive growth to how voice is going to play within dynamics. And so right now, Microsoft have launched integration into the ability to collaborate obviously within dynamic, but we're going to see it go outside of just the customer services piece and also into how we're working together within all aspects of dynamic. And I think over the next 12 to 24 months, we'll see a lot of those things tie in completely. And it'll have a big impact on what we do around third-party solutions and how we handle call centers, and those type of things is going to grow dramatically over the next year. And it'll be interesting to see how that ties in. But on a base level, Teams allows us to collaborate, allows us to take things even further and customize and extend so we can build upon applications, whether they're bespoke to ourselves or local to ourselves, whether we build them or a third party builds them for us, and we can work and use those intrinsically within Teams. In addition to that, we can work with high confidence. So we've built out what was originally Skype and Microsoft Teams Admin Center, and now we built that even further, and we're seeing further and further integration with collaboration, how we tie that in, and we have governance and control around the information, and that all ties in. And the other key aspect about Teams as a solution is that we can access this information from anywhere. So whether it's a desktop or Mac, or mobile, iPad, or web, and we're also using web, we have access to either the Chrome version or the Edge version, and we have access into all aspects of those things. And that's important because it means that I have the same look and feel regardless of what endpoint I'm accessing on. So I could be accessing it from Chrome and accessing it from Holly, my wife's Mac, and it looks and feels the same. I have the same functionality, same integration, the same everything. So I can be quite nimble how we do it. And not only that, we're seeing the ability to take calls on your iPhone and transition it seamlessly into your mobile or your desktop client, and vice versa. Take a call in and be able to hand off. And Cisco have been doing this for decades, but we're seeing a lot of the convergence between endpoints now because Microsoft are owning the whole back end piece. So it takes us into voice. So traditionally, we used to have old Cellison systems that look similar to this, where we have an old telephone block put in, old analog circuits brought in, and we'd have a telephone, and that telephone would have to be hardwired in, and then that would go into some sort of telephone patch paneling, and that would give us our basic PSTN configuration. But that's not enough. What we're seeing these days is we want to tie everything into everything. So we want to be able to provide a single service provider with dial-in conferencing, with web access, instant messaging support, availability, high availability, 3 levels of high availability, 99.99% SLA backed availability, voicemails, and then obviously tie that into the contact centers piece. And we're seeing all these solutions being able to be brought together. And that's the lovely thing about Teams is a business that single point within all those pieces. So I can bring it all in. I don't have to have a dispersed solution. I don't have to have a Jabber client on one piece and then another telephone aspect and another, and using WebEx for my video bring in and use everything is from a single pane of glass. But voice is huge, and particularly we're seeing a huge growth within lockdown is the ability to bring this in. So what happens now and where are we at? And really the reality is that hybrid working's been huge, and particularly within where I live, everybody is still working 50% from home, 50% from the office, or a vast majority of organizations haven't moved from back into the office at all. So this is growing, that voice absolutely matters, and how we work, how we bring things together is absolutely essential how we work as an organization. In addition to that, we need to be able to work hybrid, like I said. So some offices, so I had this office I'm in now, I built it out, I had it built out within it, but I've taken it quite to the extreme where I've got a Microsoft MTR in my office. And that allows my wife and I to be able to handle and come into video conferencing as when we need to. But it's taking things to absolute extreme. But we want to be able to work from a hybrid environment wherever we are. So whether we're working things, but we're hit constantly by things evolving. So I have the requirement to be able to manage and maintain my PBX, or I have to manage and maintain my telephone for the configuration. And obviously, we're always being hit by organizations that how do we keep costs down? How do we keep things on budget? And that's the lovely thing about Teams, is to help us manage and maintain all aspects of those. And this last year, we hit 650 million telephone calls made in 1 month. So that is a tremendous amount. And we're seeing that hit higher and higher and higher and higher. And every single month, we're seeing it grow and grow and grow. And so that number was from October 2020. We're seeing that grow even further. And it's been leapfrogging and leapfrogging and leapfrogging since then. Obviously, Microsoft had just released the stats in the corporate call this last week, but I haven't obviously had a chance to update that yet. But we are seeing exponential growth month and month and month upon this. And we have voice is very much still a massive part of where we see Microsoft, and Microsoft see the Microsoft Teams voice is this year is what they call the Euro voice. So we're seeing it even more. And those of you who could come from other backgrounds and other things other than Microsoft, and where does Microsoft play and how big are they? So let's take an agnostic view of things, and we'll take a look at how does Microsoft actually play in this market? So Microsoft, as far as a unified communications as a service, is that we were absolutely within the leaders or the visionaries quadrant. and we're championing things at a high rate, and we're absolutely pushing everything we can within this space to be able to make sure that we are working seamlessly. We're working in a cost effective and cost efficient methodology of being able to do so. And it's just growing and growing and growing as far as what we have is a collaboration piece, the calling piece, and the contact center. It's all been growing out. There we go. Just muting the whatever that was. So how are we doing so far? Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to raise your hands. And then everybody okay so far?
Absolutely, Jason. Very good.
Yeah, cool. So what do we want to be able to do? So Microsoft's calling is obviously for every within your organization. The idea behind that is as when we enable the licensing within people, we obviously want to be able to spin this functionality up. And we start pushing things through, and we want to be able to enable what we do. So we add a license within it, and when we utilize that calling functionality. And we were talking about before, what happens if I wanted to be able to access this from everywhere within the organization? That's absolutely the truth behind this. What ends up happening is we could then go allow us to be able to add that functionality in within a telephone call and add that dial pad in within our Microsoft Teams client. So we add that license and we enable that functionality. And what it ends up doing is it allows us to bring that in. So I can do this functionality from my mobile phone. I could do this functionality from my desktop. I could easily transfer calls between the two, be able to pull it all together, have a single place for our history, single place for our billing, single place for connectivity between it. So, but what does the future look like, and how are things working for us? So right now, we have three main main ways of being able to pull things together as a voice plan and policy between it. And we kind of emphasize on the middle section what we're trying to be able to achieve is that you can buy your lines of minutes where Microsoft is your operator. Well, that's the Microsoft Teams calling plans. You can utilize Microsoft Operator Connect. So Operator Connect allows you to pull upon, I want to say it's 28 different organizations outside of the US and UK and Europe to be able to pull this together, to be able to have seamless integration into it. And what that really means is Microsoft has given them some APIs to spin up their direct routing seamlessly from their perspective and then ingest the numbers into Microsoft. And ultimately happens in those organizations is that they will provide the telephone and lines of minutes within these things for us. So what we do then is if our organization is not currently using a telephone provider that is not on Operator Connect, then we can utilize something called direct routing. And direct routing or direct routing is based upon having a session border controller and tying that information back into Microsoft and your SIP trunk provider. Now that can be provided by the gateway can be provided by Microsoft, or the SBC can be provided by your third-party provider, or it could be provided by yourselves to be able to create that and be able to implement those things in. The other key points in here is that obviously we have organizations that are out there that are working as a systems integrator or being able to pull upon Microsoft's APIs, or their operators, OEMs, run along the whole gambit of those things. And on the endpoint support component, obviously Microsoft are being very, very peculiar about what they're allowing within the organization as physical endpoints and what they're certifying within those. So it's a huge part of Microsoft to ensure that you have good quality throughout the whole aspect of everything that's going on within that call. So whether it's the actual physical endpoint, Microsoft have certified it. If it's the actual components that allow the voice to flow through, so the PSTN section, Microsoft has certified those as well, and people should be running the verified and authenticated way of being able to do it. And then Microsoft are also providing your endpoint or your soft phone within that, and obviously their own voice backends, because they're running their own hosted SBCs and session border controllers as well. So Microsoft tried to simplify this. And then taking things within this, obviously, we're seeing reducing the amount of administration required, not just from the admins, but also from the end users. We want to be able to make things seamless for them to be able just to receive a phone call, be able to click on the toast or the notification to be able to handle those calls. Likewise, the idea behind it is if you're utilizing calling plans or Operator Connect, it's relatively simple for them to be able to spin this up quite seamlessly, be able to allow you to do it. And really, if you're utilizing Microsoft Teams from calling plans, you can get a Microsoft phone system up and running in a matter of minutes. And on top of that, you can scale. So whether it's one user or 2 users or 10,000 users, it's just as difficult to be able to get those things working and scaling it fast. Because Microsoft is providing the cloud-based solution to be able to handle that telephony. In addition to that, it's done by licenses. So when you apply more licenses to your environment and assign them to the users, your own endpoints and your own functionality scales to that. Now, some things to be able to be thoughtful of is obviously the more people you have using it and your own telephony and your own network infrastructure, obviously that needs to scale with it as well. There's only so much magic we can do with codecs and such to be able to make those things work. Next side is being able to call quality dashboard to be able to see what's going on. This has built out greatly the last few years. As of when we move from Link to Skype to Teams, seeing the call quality dashboard change. We're seeing the tooling change as well. So now we have the ability to start analyzing the kind of subnets and what they call building information. In reality, what it is how you want to divvy up and divide up your own network within subnets to be able to apply that. So if your endpoint has a particular subnet, it will pull that information through and you can see what's happening within it. So I've got customers who are triaging their own Meraki and Cisco equipment via the outputs of this because it will highlight to them as and when they have issues, and a particular subnets are reporting that they have issues. So the network may have an issue rather than the physical infrastructure itself, but we can get those highlights and that information pulled through faster and more seamlessly utilizing the call quality dashboard. In addition to that, Microsoft created some templates, some Power BI templates. So that ties into even further. So if I wanted to find out how many call queues and how many people are being able to respond in a particular time, what's the average wait time, what's the average triage time, Microsoft allow you to pull that call quality data and utilizing Graph to be able to pull that information through. So that Power BI information is being utilized, and you can then go and create your own bespoke information, your own tooling to be able to do it. Likewise, Microsoft allows us to put the endpoint information in. So you could be running a series of Dell or Asus or whatever physical endpoints you have from those type of things, put what type of components they have in them, and then Microsoft can then go and help triage that. So we've had it before where Lenovo desktops are running a particular type of a driver, and that driver for the Wi-Fi is causing us issues. So we know that we want to either roll back or fail forward or be able to apply a new set of drivers to be able to do it. So within the call quality dashboard, we can then go back to and see what errors and what devices, what issues we're having within our environment to be able to apply that into our dashboarding to be able to triage what's happening within it. So it gives us a holistic view of networks, gives us a holistic view of endpoints, gives us a holistic view of what we're doing within our business to be able to use Teams as a valid and workable and functional telephone system. And obviously within that, the whole point of being able to do these things is to give our customers and our partners the right functionality what they may need to be able to do. So we give people the option. So Operator Connect is now GA. It's now globally available. It's moved out of preview. It's now working within the all aspects. Now there's different geographies that are being spun up constantly and being allowed these things through. But reality says that we want to be able to use these things as and when we need to. And I'll go into more detail in a second about the options of each. But the first one up is Microsoft's Teams calling. So Teams calling allows us to provision solutions rapidly. So there's a list of places geographies we can land right now. But the key things is that realistically is that we can provision things rapidly. We can assign the licenses. We can pull those numbers in. Likewise, if there are opportunities where to do so, we may actually start porting telephone numbers. So porting allows us to do something called a letter of authorization. The letter of authorization is ultimately moving from one provider to another. So Microsoft would be what's called the winning provider, and your incumbent would become what's called the losing provider. And we seamlessly bring those solutions up quickly to be able to allow that functionality and those network telephone numbers to be brought into it. And likewise, Microsoft, you can then use the Microsoft calling plan to bring those in. But the key things within that, and the key overview, is that it's simple, and you can utilize domestic and international calling plans. And then every single year, we're seeing somewhere between 8 and 12 different geographies being brought into Microsoft calling plans. The reality for that is that they would announce everywhere they're going, but as soon as you announce that you're going to be providing telco services, you have to pay taxes as a telco. So there's reasons why they haven't spun that up and told everybody what's going on yet. What do you need? So the path to Microsoft calling plans is quite simple. For enterprise environments, you look at what's called the E5 license, which already has the phone system license and the conferencing license built in and baked in. We're seeing this change a little bit. We're starting to see Microsoft kind of elope with what they had with the PSTN conferencing licenses, and that's being baked into all plans now. But if you have an E3 or E1, you still have to buy that phone system license. And on top of that, you bolt in the domestic or the domestic and international license. So you always need to have an enterprise plan or a essentials plan, a business essentials plan, to be able to pull these things in. And on top of that, you add in the correct add-in within it. So E3 and E1, you need to have the phone system add-ons. And we're starting to see the demise of PSTN conferencing add-on because Microsoft are bringing that together as a whole. But what we would often do is buy the correct level and the right size. So what I often see is people who are buying calling plans oversubscribe. And so when I mean oversubscribe, they buy more minutes than what they need. Because what we do here is we apply the right size to the right group of people, not the right person. So you may have 10 people who are only making a few minutes of outbound calls, and then you would buy the smallest that would meet all of their requirements. So you add all those people up, and then you look at their phone usage, and then you scale to suit those, because the minutes are pooled across the entire organization. So between all the licenses within a particular area. So if we have people that are located within Germany who are using a calling plan, those people are all grouped together to be able to apply those licenses to it. So always buy less and then up it as you need to. The other option is to utilize that consumption billing. So we use a per pence or per cent per minute calling out for our outbound calls, and then we apply that accordingly. So start small and work up. The next option is a direct routing. So direct routing ties our providers via a voice trunk or a SIP trunk into an SBC. And I said that could be either a local SBC or it could be a third-party SBC, and how we tie those things in. And likewise, we see there within that too, we have third-party apps within it supported by the certified SBC partners. So what does that mean? So we could have this ability to tie into third-party systems such as their own contact centers, or we can have things tie into things like recording, call center recording, compliance recording, and how we want to be able to preserve and pull that information within it. And not only that, we want to be able to utilize our existing assets. So you could have an SBC that's dual forking things through, and half of it could be going to a Cisco environment, and half of it could be forking it over to Microsoft Teams, and pull them all together seamlessly. The big thing here is it allows a direct route to allow the seamless connectivity into your teams, into your SIP trunks themselves. So that's the big piece. It also allows you to do other things like what we call BYOC. So bring your own carrier. So if you're utilizing a global carrier for your telephony line of minutes, we can do that. It allows us a lot of different functionality within it to truly make it available within the Microsoft Teams. So the two reasons why people don't use Microsoft calling plans is that I have a technical requirement. So that could be the compliance, the call center, recording. I want to sweat my Cisco assets for as long as I can, those type of things. So it'll be a cost implication in not moving. And then the other one is that I maybe have a technical or a business reason. So I may have a SIP trunk provider who are providing me minutes, and I can't yet leave. So I have a commercial reason why I want to stay where I'm at. So direct routing allows us to sweat that existing relationship and prolong the existing relationship with those providers while still getting the most of the flexibility of being able to use Teams as my telephone system. So where are we now? So the locations we can start calling plans within Europe and obviously North America and APAC right now are tied into these locations. We're seeing this grow, and the reason why we're seeing this grow is that we can use direct routing within all geographies now. So there's not a geography that we can't hit without a direct route. So we can build all those things in and you seamlessly provide telephone numbers anywhere within geography. Now, some geos are more difficult than others. Some geographies only allow us to have local SBC. So for those of you who have anything to do with India, that you have to have local presentation and local SBCs, and everything has to be locally sourced. Likewise, anything out of the Middle East provides a whole nother level of complexity and difficulty because we need to provide our telephone numbers and our certificates and everything else to a local company. And it's often easier for us to be able to provide a direct route into an incumbent provider or telco within those geographies. And direct routing allows us to do that, to maintain those relationships and meet all the requirements we have within those geography areas that provide a bit more difficulty. Another huge component is SBAs. So SBA differs from the SBC by the ability that it will allow us to keep the endpoints going, regardless of whether or not. So we can register our telephone system and our endpoints and our Teams endpoints to work in what's called the offline mode. So I can still run and receive and handle telephone calls via the SBA, and it allows me to put those in. So whether there's a massive outage from a wide area network provider, or if we have the requirements to be able to do these things now, it allows me to maintain my my phone calling within that. It's my P2P calling. Everybody okay so far? I don't see any hands yet, so we'll keep going. And the third piece is Operator Connect. Operator Connect allows us to bring in our own telephone operator into it. It's probably the most seamless way of taking it extra. Now, I'll call out that there's not a lot of telcos that are on that list. There's, like I said, I want to say there's 20 odd, but obviously there's hundreds of telephone operators globally that'll be able to do it. Some of them have a vested interest to make it easy. Some of them do not. Some of them are keen to be helpful, and some of them will never be on that list. But obviously within this, what we do is we spin up the SBC as a service. That allows us to have the telephone system and the connections in, and you manage and maintain this all within the Teams admin center. So it really is actually quite seamless how it works. We log on, we validate who we say we are, then they start provisioning the services within it. There's almost like a two-factor authentication to be able to authenticate who you are within it. But the idea is that Microsoft wanted to make it really, really, really seamless within it. And the idea is that this is where I can bring my own courier and bring my own service, as long as they're on the approved list. If they have it on the approved list, then I can seamlessly bring all that connectivity right into Microsoft Teams. So some new calling features. So what's coming up? We call Bring Your Old Phone, or Microsoft SIP Gateway. It's just gone GA earlier in the month. So this is the kind of the abridged version of what we have within it. But what we want to be able to do is be able to have all of our telephone systems, and we want to limit the barrier and the hurdle of organizations coming into Microsoft Teams. So if I have to go and buy a new physical handset for all of my people, that's a barrier. That's a hurdle for me. That's a barrier, a hurdle of entry for me to get into the telephone. So what we try to do is be able to the list is actually huge. So when I call out that there's a 7,800 series of Cisco IP handset, That's actually about 5 or 6 different type of handsets you can have. And the validated list of firmwares have just been released in the last couple of weeks. So we know what we need to be running, what versions we need to be having, what's supported, what's not, and to be able to provide all those different components in. So what type of functionality are we really going to get, and how we're going to be handle those things? It'll be is basic functionality, be able to make and receive phone calls. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to have click to join and those type of things brought into it. But if we want to have that functionality, we'll tie things into what we call calling endpoints. And we're seeing the integration into things like Teams displays, handsets that have the ability for video calling. We're seeing the first components into low-cost phones. So these are really, really simple, usually a monochrome screen, simple as can be. Likewise, we're seeing some more USB handsets where it used to be very popular. We used to have like the CX300, the CX500 from Poly that allowed us to be able to USB into our desktops. Those are still increasingly popular because as of when people go into the office and work in hybrid, we don't want to retain these things. Likewise, as we're removing the old telephone system, we want to be able to hot desk or have common area phones. You don't want to have a 300 euro device out of the desk. I want something that costs me about 35, 40 euros that if it gets broken or chewed on or whatever it will be, that allows us to have the ability, the functionality to be able to run that. And then obviously, lastly, we wanted the SIP gateway. SIP gateway allows us to tie into those legacy providers. And again, keep it super easy, super simple. I want to be able to make and receive phone calls. I can still do it in my old handsets. We now log on via code. So as you walk up to a device, and we're working hybrid, I want to be able to walk into a room, be able to grab it, plug in my laptop, and log on to that endpoint. So I now have been able to do this now. So I can log onto the URL, type in that code. That code then signs me into my physical endpoint that I have on my desk. So in this case, it was just the new Logitech 500. I could go and log on to it, join in, and use it as if it's my device. And at the end of the day, I sign out, and it's no longer none the wiser of what I've got. All the content's been wiped off of it. It is obviously ready to go. But we're seeing growth as the actual features that we have it. So we're able to tie things into like location-based routing. So if I'm sat in a particular area, so if I go from say Germany to the UK and I'm doing some work, it'll break out of the UK and I'll get the lowest cost price I can for the minutes. Likewise, if I want to be able to do location-based routing and I'm sat in the United Kingdom and I want to have those phone calls break out of Germany, I could do that. As long as I'm not circumventing any sort of local laws, then obviously I can do that. Obviously, I can still do something called caller park, so we can put the call on hold, park it, and then that allows me to go and call out through a to-noise system or a PA system and tell people to call and group call pickup. I can then go and have that submitted to either delegates or to a group call and pull these things whether through a call queue or auto tenants. And this is obviously growing and growing and growing. And the overall functionality that we're seeing growing. Some of the things that we've seen recently is that financially backed SLA is grown another 9. So it's no longer 99.9%. It's now 99.99%. And we're having all the existing functionality and richness that we've had is continuing to grow drastically. So that kind of brings in where we were at with everything we have so far with the actual components that we have within the calling and the phone system. Do you guys, anything else? Because we're going to be moving into like a new sub area in a second. I just want to make sure everybody's, any questions we have over, and sorry, if we have any questions that we have within kind of Teams voice, by all means, you can raise it now or submit it through in either in the chat window or feel free to come off mute. We can handle that as and when. Otherwise, we'll plod on. Cool. Carry on. Yeah, of course. What I'll do is I'll give the slides to Siggy and team and to Dennis, and they'll have in the end we'll have copies of all these things. So they'll be ready to go with the slides and such. And then anything we needed, I'll make sure they have them.
Jason, I have a question in regards to the previous slide with the login that you've shown. Because can you switch back to the slide
Yeah,
that I'm
grabbing
talking
it
about?
there. Yes, sir. Yeah. That one?
Yeah. Well, I got this week, yeah, when I logged into my phone, and I was wondering, it also asked me, because I'm the primary owner of that phone, for that login, yeah, which seems like the multi-factor authentication login for the phone, yeah. Did you see the same here?
So I've got a couple of things going on. So obviously you can the new devices allow you to allow MFA in. So they allow you to have the functionality in to be able to handle that queries through. If you're using an old device, then obviously that doesn't, it's not smart enough to be able to handle modern auth. So likewise, if you're utilizing Microsoft Teams meeting rooms, you do exactly the same thing. Well, we're having the ability to handle modern authentication. And you can start applying all sorts of crazy things. So you can start applying conditional access and rights to it. So that way, if it's coming from outside of Germany to be able to do it, to handle it. Florian's asked a really, really good question, because and it's been handled right there. So if you're using DECT handsets to Microsoft, the answer right now is there's no seamless. So Microsoft are actively preventing the ability to use DECT within Teams devices, and I don't understand fully as to why, but there's no certified handset. So there's other options out there. So like a SpectraLink, which provide DECT handsets, have the ability to do it. There's what they'll actively tell you is, rather than using DECT, use your mobile phone. So you can obviously SIM ring your endpoint devices, or you can have it to be able to bring your handset and use Teams on your mobile. So their active response is, why don't we use Microsoft Teams on your mobile phone? But in reality, DECT. So I can get a DECT headset, I can get that working, but I can't. And there's also some providers have a DECT. So you have a physical handset, but the actual unit you use to pick up to answer the call, that is DECT. But you don't have anything like with traditional DECT phone to be able to do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so why DECT phones? Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, you can use your actual smartphone to be able to handle it, but there's a lot of things like when you're working in like a manufacturing environment, DECT is still very, very popular, as is when you're using it for hospitality. So hotels still use a lot of DECT phones. And again, what they'll suggest you use is the mobile functionality within it, and almost down to what we would use for a frontline. And when we would use a frontline worker methodology of working, we would use that again here. So we would use the mobile endpoint as something bigger than just a handset. We would also use it as the ability to, use shifts, or use a way of communicating, collaborating within it. All good? Any more? We'll shift on to what happens now. So as we move into the new way of working and the new world of working, the telephony takes things through, but we've just ripped out everything that we had in our meeting rooms. And often, it's a bit of a strong word, but I often use the word orphaned, where our meeting rooms have just been orphaned, where they had this whole telephone system, whether it's a Poly or Cisco or whatever we were using within those rooms, and we just ripped all that out. So we now have this whole new way of doing things, and meeting and conferencing, and how we tie all those voice access in are huge. And we want to be able to have the ability to work from anywhere, and be able to have meetings from anywhere, and work intelligently within it. And we've seen some really, really big growth in this in the last couple of weeks, where Microsoft implemented things like called intelligent cameras and intelligent speakers. So I don't know how many of you have seen some of the new stuff that are coming out of Amazon, but the same thing. So I've got an Echo Show 15 in my kitchen, and what happens then is when I walk into the room, it recognizes that's me. Likewise, if I use my Apple phone and I look at it, it knows that's me. So what happens here is that you walk into a meeting room and it knows it's you. So it realizes who you are and how things are working together. And with the meeting room intelligence has grown on drastically. Likewise, Microsoft could take a section of your voice and analyze it against you. So as and when you speak, it realizes that I'm just not, the Belper meeting room. I'm now Jason Wynn, and it knows who I am. So when I start doing any sort of dictation servicing or taking all the intelligent information out of it, it knows who I am. So that way it leverages the AI within Microsoft and the Azure Media Services to be able to apply that through and make sure that it knows that whether it sees my face or it listens to my voice, it knows it's Jason Wynn to be able to apply that in. And likewise, Microsoft are trying to draw things efficient. So we want to be able to work, whether it's on 4G or LTE or 5G networks and low bandwidth environments. We want to be able to ensure what actually happens. And here's what we say over here is called a Brucey bonus, basically something that you don't get told, but you probably should know, is that when you start a meeting and you're working globally within people, it's the first person who joins is where things are worked from. So for example, if I have, 100 employees from Germany, and I have one person in Seattle, a Redmond, that logs on, and he's the first person, all 100 people are joining into Germany to then go back over to the data center, which is in, Western United States. So that's one of the things but the reason why I call that out is that the global infrastructure behind it is Microsoft, and it's a very much, they're one of the hugest providers of data networks within the world, and using the Azure backbone to be able to provide the data services between it, and all that's being handled in. So as and when we bring up those services, things are being you're offloaded to your closest data network within it. I know it's like I want to say Germany's within Eastern Europe or Central Europe to be able to grab that data center in and obviously apply it back out. Likewise, I would join in from a British data center, then I would be able to go, and we're using that backhaul traffic to be able to apply it. And then everything within the meeting space still is secure, compliant, and how we have these things through. In the next couple of months, what we're going to be able to see as well is, as and when I just saw it a few minutes ago where we had that recording, and we go back up to the chat, and I can see that Dennis has added that meeting in and be able to apply the meeting notes in. So pretty soon we'll be able to upload the entire deck. We'll have the whole entire transcription within that information, who's asked what, who's in where they were, what was going on with that information, to be able to apply it through. And it's huge. In addition to that, when we start applying things in with the web conferencing aspects, it gets even cooler, where I can find out how many people are engaged. So if I go and ask you to register and you join in from that conference, being able to understand who's what, where, and why, and what's going on, it gives me the ability to understand that how many people are actually engaged in the session. Were they off playing, checking out the Byron score, or were they trying to actually understand what was going on with the meeting? Were they playing solitaire or patience, or playing card games and playing mahjong or minesweeper or whatever it could be all over again? But were they actually engaged? And we can start pulling that content through very, very soon as well. So the actual growth of what we're capable of seeing is huge. But taking us back in, we want to be able to ensure that we have access to meet anywhere and everywhere within it. So whether it's from a meeting room, a mobile, or a desktop, like I was saying to you before, is that because the client is 98% the same code, whether it's an Android device, a mobile device, a desktop, or a meeting room, it has the same connectivity and the same access, the same understanding from everywhere. I can go and meet anywhere. So I could be on a mobile phone and then be able to have that chat. I can start doing the annotation. I can do a presentation from my mobile phone and use laser tag, doing display and inking up and everything I was doing, while still have that seamless integration into the Microsoft Teams room or a desktop client or web client or wherever it is. Likewise, within that, we have audio conferencing, so that PST and conferencing guys, and that's growing huge. And the amount of people we can have dial in, and so if audio is like here to what we're trying to achieve within a lot of this, and so I can spin up, I can call in and call out of my meeting if I want to. Likewise, I can pull in and call out who's trying to be part of our conference. And I want to be able to have that seamless joined up environment and access within it to be able to provide those telephony services regardless of where they're physically sat. I want to be able to make sure the quality is good. So whether I'm using a Microsoft Teams certified device or a Skype certified device, in we're having this integration in, and so one of the things you're going to start seeing in all the Teams certified devices is a Teams button, so I can close whether I'm on wherever I'm at, I can press the Teams button and it joins me back into that Teams, brings Teams to the center. And Microsoft have been working hard on making sure a lot of these things work together. So the easiest place to go to is the office.com/Teams devices, and that tells you what's been certified, whether it's a desktop, a desk phone, whether it's a headset, whether it's a Microsoft Teams room, and it brings it all together in the same spot. Likewise, Microsoft been working hard on bringing this together, so they made it a little bit more easy, more seamless within it. So what do we actually have, and where are things, what's going on? So all the certified devices all have to go through a centralized team that's out of Seattle and Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, and they all have to be certified, tested, and validated. They all have to meet their certain stringent requirements of what they're trying to do and achieve, and what their future roadmap is. That all ties into what we're doing. So the new devices have Cortana, have to be able to pull on the AI within Microsoft. So I'm saying the intelligent cameras, Microsoft Teams rooms, intelligent speakers, and the growth of those things. Mobile phones will be utilizing obviously Android and Microsoft or Apple iOS, and whether you're using a hockey puck or a speakerphone. Mobile phone stations, we saw a huge upsurge of this in 2020 before lockdown, where we had executives that wanted to be able to utilize a Microsoft Teams as their endpoint, but still wanted a physical desk. And as when we start seeing hybrid coming to the foray even more very shortly, mobile phone stations will be, so Poly released the one called the Alara, and it was like selling at such a rate. There was just a global shortage. We just couldn't buy them fast enough because it was just going crazy. And headsets as well. I remember talking to Microsoft kind of circa 2019, and the number one headset even then in 2019 and 2020 were earbuds from Apple, which made me laugh. So instead of people inside of Microsoft utilizing a Jabber or Poly or Lenovo Logitech or Yealink headsets, they were still very much using the old connector in 3.5 millimeter connector into a laptop and utilizing that, which is not going to provide. Don't let the moral of this story is, don't let the last 3 feet of a global solution be your problem. Budget for it accordingly. Bring us on to Microsoft Teams rooms. So Microsoft Teams room has been growing, transform any space, whether it's large, small, focus. Microsoft's huge interest this year is what they call kind of more intimate spaces, the huddle rooms. Particularly in the UK, it's been big rooms that have been doing it. Now Microsoft have really put the focus on huddle spaces and smaller meeting rooms and putting a lot of emphasis in that. We've seen growth within things like Yealink, creating kind of almost like a pseudo Surface Hub that costs like a third of the price to be able to pull these things in. Again, one U bar, so it'll have a single piece to be able to go into a small room. They're bringing things now like a BYO, bring your own device for huddle as well. So Yealink again have a device that you can plug in via USB-C and plug it in to be able to add those in. And then that with Microsoft Touch and Inkback, so we can go and add those Microsoft Teams rooms in. Now we can do Inkbacks within it as well. That's been growing exponentially between that. Content capture. So what content capture allows you to do is to add an additional camera into the room, and they've got a set of cameras that are on the certified list, and it allows you to take an analog whiteboard and ingest it in. So you're like, well, what's the point in that? I won't, if somebody walks in front of it. Well, that's the really cool thing is that as and when you walk in front of the meeting room or walk in front of the whiteboard, it captures what was there already there. And so as you walk in front of it, it ingests what you already have within the whiteboard and portrays it against the overlays over your back. So that's one of the biggest pieces is people want to be able to do this now. We're going to see this grow out even more, and I've seen it demoed by Microsoft to be able to do this from like a Surface Pro, to be able to just point it at a whiteboard and be able to grab all this in. So certainly is growing huge in the amount of ingest that we have within that. It's very, very clever. And the utilization between Azure Media Services and Microsoft Teams is going to continue to grow. Capacity notification. So I walk into a room, the room knows that I'm only allowed 5 people. So in this case, what will happen is it will come back and say, actually, sir, you've got now 6 people in this room. You've exceeded it, and there's no way you can socially distance it appropriately from there. Room remote. So I can control the meeting room. So as and when I walk into a meeting room, I don't want to touch anything. And I'm not sure how stringent things are in Germany, but within the UK, people are still a bit apprehensive about going into places. They're already touching their phone. So if I can make it seamless within that to be able to walk into a meeting room and not touch anything, gives people the feel good factor that I don't have to touch anything. So now I can share, I can do control, I can control the meeting room via my mobile phone. Casting, again, if I want to be able to showcase how I have this, I can do this presentation now to an MTR and share everything within it. So I can now go on the left-hand side is the sequence of events. So I can say, I want to cast to the Built for Meeting Room. And what do I want to do? I want to share my iPhone screen, or I want to share a PowerPoint. I can share that seamlessly between the two. And the last component is meeting rooms. So the device management. So I now have the ability within the device manager is broken out into a couple of things. So I've got to be somewhat careful because the tenant I often use is on a the same as Siggy has, is a bit more advanced than what everybody else has. But I know for a fact that right now I can log on and I can do what's called MTR OA, which is Android, or I can do an MTR over Windows. I can manage it. We're going to see displays within this, phones within this. It's dependent upon licenses and how we build this out. And I can apply the right profiles and compliances between it to be able to do it. And likewise, try to make it really, really easy and really, really simple. It is a simple pane of glass within the Teams Admin Center to be able to provision, being able to apply the policies to it, to know whether or not it's online, offline, to find out whether or not somebody's unplugged the USB camera out of the back of it, or the Ethernet's been pulled, or that the firmware is out of date, and I can update the firmware within it, and I have the full device management suite within that single piece. So that takes me up to just about time. I'll go a few minutes of questions if anybody has any questions within it, but by all means, shout out now.
Well, Jason, I had a question. So if I fall asleep, the organizer will be notified by by not participation.
Yeah.
This sounds a little bit scary, especially for the Germans, because that sounds like controlling the behavior of your attendees. Yeah, and that's we are very picky on those kind of data protection things.
I've heard of this Jedi-like solution called the Employees Council. So it is created upon when you create your session. So if you create a webinar, and you can granularly select it, so it's not on by default.
Okay.
Whereas we're in the UK, I would say we're more lackadaisical around our control around these things, and I can monitor whatever I want with whomever I want, whenever, like on whatever application. Now, what would happen within your instances is that we would regulate who or what or when, depending upon what is right for that point. So the answer is if I created a session within the UK and I sent that invite out, I would have to know what to do and not to do for people within the UK. So there's an education and adoption and an education piece within that to ensure that I'm not causing any sort of level of disruption, or I'm not violating anybody's civil rights and liberties within that to be able to do it. But yeah, that technically it's wholly possible to say that I was playing. It doesn't tell you what you were doing, but it would just say that on screen, off screen. So I was paying attention to the session. It doesn't say that I was, surfing dodgy information, questionable information at the same time, or I was, taking your screenshots and sending them to somebody else. It just says I'm on screen and off screen during the webinar.
But doesn't this sound? You can always cheat it, with a different computer. So it sounds like okay. This is like it only tells you that the Teams client has been running and is the primary one.
Yeah.
But if you use multiple screens, well, but okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully
And, you guys also know that, as Ian says, it picks up snoring on your mic and all sorts. Yes, but in again, the other piece as well is that, you know, just as well as I, digital rights management is only as good as me picking up my mobile phone and taking a picture of what's going on the screen. And there's only something. But you're right. If I was on a separate PC and I could do whatever I wanted to be, I could be running a VM within that same piece or whatever, however you want to be able to do it. Yeah, there's only so much control. But that wraps up my session, and this is me. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, reach out. And then if you want to tweet to me or send me a message, by all means, send me. I'm on at @JWynn, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the great session.
Cheers,
Jason.
guys. Have a lovely weekend. I'll send you these slides in a moment. Then, cheers, Dennis.
That would be awesome. I will share
Awesome.
them with everybody. So thank you very much.